Yeah, let me come to this. Okay, so let me actually talk about the public good. So you all of you know that what is public good and all, right? The definition of public good is nothing but if it has been provided to one customer, it is difficult to or impossible to stop another from enjoying it too. So this is what is called the non-excludable characteristics, which in the last lecture we said. So the amount of the good I enjoy has no effect on the amount you enjoy, which is what is called the non-rival. So these two things are the very primary characteristics, which is what is formalized by none other than Samuelson. So things are very straight from that, and there are so many examples of what kind of goods can be public good and what kind of good cannot be that. So in the last lecture, I was talked about the perfect example, which is called the lighthouse example, or in a confined area, a street light. Okay, so all this can be the public good. But the problem, there are other issues related with public good, which we'll touch upon later. So this is what is called different kinds of this two characteristics, that is non-rival, rival, non-excludable, excludable, function. That is if some good can be non-rival, but at the same time non-excludable also. Some goods can be rival and excludable. If it is rival and excludable, we call it as pure private good. So if it is non-rival and non-excludable, on the other hand, we say the pure public good. But there are certain good which is non-excludable but rival, as well as non-rival but excludable. So these are examples which many researchers were already talked about. So there are many people who worked on it, and there are a couple of Nobel Prize even for this kind of analysis. Elinor Ostrom, the first lady of the first economist who is actually a female, got Nobel prizes on who in fact worked on this thing. So we had already talked about all that. Now, what is the consequence of a public good? So this is what is the beginning point which we are going to discuss today. So non-excludable, very difficult for private sector to provide it and make profit. So this is what is the problem. So if it is non-excludable, then it is not the private party are going to basically provide that. If it is non-rivalry, do not want to exclude people as it is inefficient to do it. So these are the two problems. That is, basic research or information or R&D has the same effect. That is, if somebody had, you may not be knowing about certain information till the point that somebody has discovered. The moment somebody has discovered, then it is known to all of us. So that is what is called the non-excludability. An perfect example is actually our Creative Commons. So if you basically upload a photo or a PDF in internet, space, cloud. So once you upload, the moment you upload, this become public. So even if you delete, it may not be get deleted because it would be saved in some other form somewhere. All right. So that is why it say that in that sense it is actually the non-excludability comes into play, a crucial role, as well as in the non-rivalry example also being applicable in the public, that is internet domain. For example, if I uploaded the same PDF, now no how many people consumes this same PDF makes the product non-exhaustible, because it will never get exhausted. Okay, so you can keep sharing. So there are many links, many programs which is people may be banned, but you can freely get it, or you can somehow manage to get it and all. So why? Because once it is actually been created, then it is difficult to destroy in that sense. So that kind of information is what is called the same, see, public good in a pure sense. So in real world, we have so many examples. For example, there are many firewall products which is people try to open it up to the general public. For example, the Sci-Fi Network, or even they had downloaded the entire JSTOR. You maybe Aaron Shorts, the Shorts example, and there are many people who have done that. Okay, so This is what is called this problem. That is one, and now the private good has a problem that it is not the problem. The private good has a characteristics that those who pay can use, and they can completely internalize the thing. So this is what is called a pure private good. But in the pure private good, there is no problem of free riding. All right, that is, you may not be actually paying the commodity, but at the same time, you are also getting benefit out of it. That kind of situation will never occur when it is pure private. That is the fundamental problem of all public good. As I would rather someone else paid for the public good I consume. So this is what is called the free riding problem or free rider problem. Now, the prisoner's dilemma action can be seen in that sense. So, X pays, X don't pay, I pay, then I don't pay. So these are the three kind of the two situation which will interact. So imagine it costs like $4 to provide a clean street outside my house. Either I or my neighbor can pay for it. We both value clean street at maybe £3. If one of us pays £4, we are both better off. So this is what is the payoff. So if he pays and I pay, then both will get actually the negative one minus minus one minus one, because your utility is only three, and what you pay is actually four. So in that sense, both gets worse off in that. But if none of us pay, that means we lose anything, but we also gain nothing. So in that situation, you gain zero, and the other person is also gain. These are the two kind of situation which somebody has, and at the other point, one pay, the other don't pay. So the person who pays, that person is actually going to have a sort of negative 1 rupee, and the other person gets a positive 3 rupee. So this is even repeated in the other case also. So what would be the best strategy in that situation? So it depends. If it is the situation is a non-cooperative one, then definitely things are going to be either in the -1 1 situation or in the +1 situation. So the 0 0 situation. So in USA, people pay voluntary subscription for public broadcasting services. Less than 10% do so. In the UK, it is mandatory to pay TV license fee. So the town of Cambridge distributed 350 bikes around the town for people to use free of charge. You had to return the bike to a special stand after using it. Within 4 days, they had all gone. So this is what is actually happens when people free rides. So the same problem is always there in the department. We also try to provide bicycles in the department. But the problem is that who is going to guard the bicycle. So if it has been guarded, then completely, then the problem is that then people will get use. Oh yes, tell me. Hello. Okay, tell me. Hello. കേൾക്കുന്നില്ല, ഞാൻ ഇത്രയും നേരമായിട്ട് പറയുന്നൊന്നും കേട്ടില്ല. ഹലോ ഹലോ ഹലോ. Okay, let me check. ഹലോ, അപ്പൊ ഇത്രയും നേരം പറഞ്ഞത് കേട്ടില്ല? Oh my god. Okay, then why don't you people? Oh, you typed it. Sorry. So I thought the class is going very well. All right. Okay, so let me start from the beginning then. Okay, is it fine? Is it fine? Okay. Okay, what I am trying to make is actually today's lecture is all about the good lecture. Okay, this is in continuation of uh, this is in continuation with what we had basically uh, done yesterday, the last lecture, where I had talked about a bit on the public goods characteristics as well as the other issues. Okay, now what is actually I'm going to speak strictly speak upon in this aspect of public good, which how we price as well as value it basically. So the definition in that sense is very clear that this is a Samuelson's definition in that sense. Formalization, that is, a value good means a non-excludable, non-rival. So it has been provided to one consumer, it is difficult or impossible to stop another from enjoying it too, which is called the non-excludability. At the same time, the amount of the good I enjoy has no effect on the amount you enjoy, then that is called the non-rivalry characteristics. So there are different varieties of cross characterization of commodities which are goods which we can see in the real world. For example, we may be having a non-rival commodity at the same time non-excludable. This is what is called a pure public good. At the same time, the opposite, that is rival and excludable, then you call a pure. Then you also have commodities which is non-excludable, at the same time it is rival, as well as excludable at the same time non-rival. So these are actually determines different kinds of commodity at its own mechanism. All right. So for example, there are different commodities which we can list out. An interesting case of pure public goods, no, we had said about the this one, that is the lighthouse example in the last lecture. More interesting examples which we can use is are the following. Like for example, if you upload a file in the internet space, cloud, or wherever, even if you would like to delete the file, you can delete it, because once it is uploaded, it will remain there forever. Because some or the other way, if somebody gets shared and then shares it, and then it keep getting shared. At the same time, the same commodity has a non-exhaustibility characteristics also. It's not only having non-equal characteristics, but at the same time, it is non-exhaustibility characteristics. For example, your PDF file is actually not going to be, stopped by other person's consumption or whatever, because PDF means it, once it is created, it can be keep producing. All right. So these are the things which normally people say that having public good character. This is what is comes under the Creative Commons, whatever. Therefore, it is called the common good or a public good. There are many people who work on this concept, and some of them got Nobel Prize in that sense. For example, Elinor Ostrom got Nobel Prize in this regard. So there are many works, in fact, talked about different aspects of public good and a collective good, which is called the collective good, the common good. These are different. So public good is different, collective good is different, good is different. We are going to study all that in the subsequent lectures. But the interesting aspect of this particular thing is about its consequence. Okay, so let us consider the non-excludability consequence. Very difficult for the private sector to provide it and make it a profit. Okay, profitable. This is what is once this good is actually non-excludable, any good which is having a non-excludable characteristics, then it is very, very difficult to make profit. This is at the same time, there is another problem which is non-rivalry things, and that do not want to exclude people as efficient. So these are the two things which is comes always. Let us check the first one, non-excludability. This non-excludability is what I said earlier. That is, once you upload a file, even with all your firewall, you can't even stop the person from consuming it. This is the most important part of the story. So in that sense, the non-excludability play a very crucial role. For example, in the example which we said, that is the internet or the files or photograph or PDF files or whatever, voice record, everything, once you upload it, it will remain, even if delete and all. If somebody get shared or somebody shares it, and then it will remain in the cloud space. So that itself comes with the typical characteristics of the non-excludability. Again, nobody can stop from using it. So you all, maybe the Schwartz guy had actually downloaded the entire JSTOR article into and placed it into the open space. Even after JSTOR had a lot of firewall and security measures. See, similarly, there are sci-fi network, which is also some girl who basically downloaded all the information across scientific journals and all. You can freely in that particular domain. So if you have a DOI or the digital that the DOI tag and all, you will get it downloaded. Or even if you the stable URL, you will get it downloaded. So this is what's actually called the non-excludable and at the same time non-drivable. So therefore, it is very difficult for situation the private party to provide such commodity, because it is not very profitable for all of them in that sense. So this whole process is what is called a free rider problem. Okay, so that means if it is a goods or any good which is having this sort of a public that is non-excludable, non-rival characteristic, then that good is essentially cannot be provided by a private party, because there is always a free riding. That is a person who get benefit even without paying it. Because all of you know that we are most of us are this free riders. Like you get textbooks, everything from all this Russian sites and different kinds of this copyleft sites. So that means we are free riding, because it is not we are very bad, but the problem is that the commodities nature itself is actually public. Because once in the internet, once you upload, anybody can actually mirror it and reproduce it and all. So therefore it is very difficult to actually accuse people that you had done a bad thing and all, because of the characteristics of the commodity. You can restrict and all with copyright and many other things, and that is what many people do. But the problem is that still, because of the characteristics of the commodity, you cannot completely exclude people from consuming, or free riding from the commodity. Therefore such commodity can always collectively own, not individually own. This is the first point which I would like to make. So now let us make the same in the prisoner's dilemma example. That is, in order to bring for example, we had already discussed this thing in our classes in micro. That is, if I want to build something, then I have to pay. At the same time, you have to also pay. Then both of us may get benefit. But at the same time, if somebody don't pay, but still I paid, then the other person is a free rider. So but at the same time, I lose my money. So this is what is in this thing. So the example tells us that if it is £4 per investment for that project, and the benefit is actually 3, then if that is the case, then I would be losing. So what is the end result? Nothing will take place. So nobody is going to actually pay. So 0 0. So neither I lose, I gain. But at the same time, if I pay, I still lose, even worse than what is I don't pay. So that is what is a kind of a situation. So this is what is makes people actually know to invest. That is, private player will not invest in such cases in the public, or it is always inefficient for them to invest in that context. So other example of free rider problem is the US people pay voluntary subscription for the public broadcasting service. This is also a studies provided that less than 10% of people do the same. At the same time, in the United States, so United Kingdom, that is in Britain, they have to pay, the license fee. So there is no free riding in that sense. So the town again, the town of Cambridge distributed 350 bikes around the town for people to use free of charge. But within a couple of days, it has actually vanished. The same problem we were also encountering the campus, because the administration would like to provide a cycling facility as well as cycle bringing cycle in the department and for the use. But the issue is that how do we guard the cycle? Now the two funny issues are going to come. If somebody guards it, then it becomes actually non-usable, or it is not necessarily free available for all of us to use. On the contrary, if if we leave it to the users, then some user will take and they'll keep it, and the other loser again the same problem will arise. So these are the issues which is with the free rider example. So when can private provision of public good works? So this is what is the question which we need to ask. Now, if you can't actually provide certain things as public good because of its characteristics, then most of the commodities have the same problem. So in that sense, there cannot be any sort of R&D investment, whatever. So in that context, this question makes sense. So you often find shops forming groups to improve the environment. They act, for example, Oxford Street Traders Association. Also, rich neighborhood sometimes pay for security patrols. Okay, in different part of the country, even in Trivandrum, we have this kind of thing. So why does this work in that sense? People are not all the same. Some people value the public good a lot. So this is what is comes under the premise of altruism. People feel good if they contribute to the public good. This is on the other side. There are many philanthropic movements across the world where people do the same. So in that sense, so but at the same time, there are certain foundation which they do it deliberately for profit. So there are not for profit as well as for profit organization in that sense. So in the for-profit thing, we cannot say that that is public good anyway. So the not-for-profit cases can be put under this broader category. So user fees for excluded by public good and for publicly provided private good. So this is also very important thing, that is how the earlier question can be addressed in this following sense, that is some public goods are excludable, for example a road, bridge, etc. Even we can have this question that if a road somebody is using at the same time, it is excludes the other person from using it. Bridge, same. So some goods, that is education, water, have a large cost of supplying additional individuals are often publicly provided. Again, this is also another problem with that this issue. So how does welfare get maximized in this situation is the question in a market oriented mechanism. So the best possible way is to allow everyone to travel and to somehow pay for the bridge. So this is what is everybody wish to. So welfare is equal to the cost of the bridge. So that is, if everybody pays, then that is going to be the even thing. That is, the cost is going to be basically equals with the welfare. But at the same time, some people may not, or some people cannot. So the price or fee, that is demand, the cost of bridge. So how do we price this sort of a good? Is it a higher price or per use price or a fixed price or a floor price? There are different kinds of pricing. So that we will discuss in the next lecture, where the pricing of the public good is always a question. So in this particular issue is what is actually the most important concern as far as this lecture is concerned. So let me go to the other issue, that is the impure public good. That is, as I said, in the pure public good case, it is purely non-exclusive, non-rival. So there are few examples only we can say that it is going to work in that sense of a pure public good. But at the same time, most of the case, there are public good which is called the impure nature. That is anything with a positive consumption externality, congested good roads, club goods that is excludable with congestion or museum, local public good parks, library, etc. These are actually goods which is not completely a pure public good. So if somebody consumes, then it is also having some sort of a relaxation on the characteristics. So this is what is called the impure public good. So how much public good should the government provide in that one? That means how much education, how much money has to be given, or how much budget has to be kept for education, health. These are called the public good in one sense. At the same time, it is not. Now, health being a public good is now very, very obvious to all of us. But earlier, we all thought that we had all paid for our education, and but if you calculate your education and the amount of aid which your institution got and everything, things are not going to be that sort of a pure private good which you had already from your own calculations point of view. At the same time, or your perception, at the same time, from a public good perspective, you can still say that it is completely public, because the expenditure which you had incurred is completely different to that of the other case. So therefore, there is always this question of marginal benefit of public good and marginal cost of public good. So this is actually a crisscross situation. So a marginal benefit in that sense is a non-excludable marginal benefit, which is equal to marginal benefit of 1%, the first person, second person, and the nth person, which is called the total marginal benefit. So how do we know whether we have the socially optimal quantity of public good? So if the marginal benefit from the public good, that is sigma mu pg or public good, uh, is the summation which I have already said, as well as the marginal cost providing one more unit of public good. This is that is the MCPG. So if you know all this calculative points, then you can say that then we can easily say that whether you can provide it publicly or privately. So the marginal benefit from the public good, which is equal to marginal cost of public good, then marginal benefit of the private good is going to be MUI, and the marginal cost of providing public. If all this is actually come together, then you can say that there is no distinction between whether it is a public good or a private good. So, if you want to have the distinction, then you have to have the right mix. If marginal benefit of public good by marginal cost of public good, which is equal to marginal benefit of private good, which is divided by the marginal cost of private good. So, which is equivalently say that the sigma mu, that is the marginal utility of all all the marginal utility of public good by the cost of public good, which is equal to the marginal utility of the ith individual divided by the marginal cost of the ith individual. So this is what is called the standard versions of the understanding. This is simply called the cost benefit analysis of the public good. So if it is straight, then there is, as I said, there is no distinction between public good being provided by a private person or public authority, because the price is completely internalized in that commodity for that commodity. But that is unrealistic even by the very conceptualization of the Samuelson, because he said that certain commodities you can't do it because you have a free rider problem, which I've said earlier. Or what you called in the literature, it is called the externality. For example, Buchanan and Stubblebind's paper, they talked about this externality, because commodities always have this externality which says that either a cost or benefit is going to be inflicted by this good. So we had already said, if that is the case, that externality exists, then it is no longer this marginal utility of a private party consuming a public good is going to be equal to that of the marginal utility, that public good itself. So this is what is actually the issue, which basically backs some agency, that is some agency such as the government, or a third party which is supposed to provide the thing, which is actually not completely weigh or gauge the commodities utility per individual with that of the cost of it. So that sort of a calculation is nothing to do with the public good, because it is having an excludability, a non-excludability, non-rival, or at the same time it means that there is a sort of an externality exists in that sort of a commodity in one way, or you say that there is a possibility of a free riding on the commodity on the other side. So these are the issues which makes a commodity which cannot be purely as we in the microeconomics lecture formalize that, MU, that is marginal utility of commodity X of consumed by a ith individual is going to be equal to his benefit or his cost. So that sort of a proposition is not going to work in this case. So you have to look for different calculation mechanism to understand this. So when it is provided, for example, zero mc, people will tend to overstate their desire for it. When it is provided a positive marginal cost, people will tend to understand their desire for it, hoping to free ride. So in that context, how do we get to provide people the right quantity of the public good? If when it is provided at zero marginal cost, people will tend to overstate their desire for it, because this is the question which is Samuelson asked in his paper. So when it is provided at zero cost, there is no marginal cost, people will tend to overstate their desire. For example, if nothing, then people will ask more, because people have a there is a problem that not only with the commodity relation, it is also people's desire also matters in that sense. If people have a private mind, then definitely they do have a maximization, because our assumption per se says that people are profit maximizing or selfish or whatever. So if that premise prevails, then it implies immediately that it imply that this sort of marginal cost, which is actually a paltry or zero marginal cost, will tend people to argue for or ask for a higher quantity. So literally that inflicts a very high cost on the provision of providing public goods. So when it is provided at positive marginal cost, people will tend to understand their desire for it, hoping to free ride. Now, this is also in a classic cases. Now, recently there is a discussion that the government has to completely bear by the public. It is actually a good thing that the government has to completely support the patients, for example, the corona patients or quarantine patients, etc. But there is an issue that if your resources are not crunched or resources are not constrained, then this argument is well and good, this is perfect. But at the same time, if resources are constrained, then the government, the institution, whichever institution we talk about, they have also try to or go for a provision of rationing. Okay, so this is an argument which normally bring by every, but a welfare state has no option of the same, or there is no point of arguing or saying that they have resource constraint, therefore they, because then the purpose of the state is different. If the purpose of the state is welfare, then that welfare has its own, it's a spectrum. Okay, it is not a one point welfare. There are a variety of possibility of welfare. So how much you have to be given? For example, in the Scandinavian place, you have actually this unemployment benefit. That is, if you are not found a job on the day, you will get this living expense of the day. So, but at the same time, on the contrary, this is well and good. People say that is fine. But at the same time, what is actually the level of payment which they are having? That is in the form of direct tax and all. So, whatever the person earns when they have employment, they have to pay direct tax almost 40 to 50%. So, if that is the case, then this issue is going to be looming and it is going to be difficult. So in that context only, this spectrum of welfare is very, very important. Where do we place our welfare? So if you have resource of that kind, then definitely you can provide that extent of welfare measures to people. But if you cannot have the resources of that kind, then difficult. So again, this is directly linked with the pricing of the commodity, which we said. So about the marginal cost of commodity, or marginal cost which we charge for the commodity or the public provision of public commodity or good. So when it is provided by paucity MC, people tend to underestimate their decision. Now, if on the contrary, even if that is the case, then if people charge a bit of money, then people say that they don't need it. Okay, so that is again going to have a under reported quantity of commodity, which is again going to have a problem. So we want to find the incentive compatible mechanism, that is provision schemes where it is everyone's interest to correctly report how much they value the good. So once you know this thing, then only you can say that the commodity, then only you can in fact provide the commodity very consistently. And most of the programs which is actually fails in the due course of many public good, providing of many public good, is because they don't know exactly what is actually the price or the benefit, or the two problem which we said, the overstating or understating of their need. So this is the crucial issue as far as the public commodities are concerned. Now there are many solution of pricing, or as I said in the beginning, that there are different pricing of the commodity, public commodity and its provisioning are adopted across the world. This is one mechanism which is called the Vickers auction mechanism. But technically speaking, that this is a mechanism where how do we price the final thing. But we have to little bit know about this, because most of you already understand this sort of an auction or pricing of commodity. This is a very simple model. One unit of a good to be sold, people have independent and private values. That is, every individual has their own value. Okay. Now, these are the two assumptions which are a basic assumption, and then there are a couple of rules in that. That is, bids are submitted, and the highest bid get this object. The winners pay the amount bid by the second highest bidder. Optimal strategy, that bid how much you value the object. So this is what is called the Vickers auction. It's very simple. This is always used in different part of the world of their as their auction mechanism. So this is not actually in I know myself that this sort of an auction is already at least prevails in for a century in our own places and all, because you bid the highest, and what is actually the second highest bid has to be paid. So this is what is. So if you know that what is the real value of the thing, so everybody has their own valuation, and those who value the most would get. This is the same principle. Those who value the most get the commodity at the second highest price of the commodity. So this is what is the thing. So this is basically try to understand that what is the truthfulness of a person, or about what is the valuation of the person in that. This is an indirect method to understand the truthfulness of your interest, as well as whether you need the commodity or not. So highest bid for everyone else is B. That is, my value is B star. So if I submit a bid which is B, which is greater than B, which imply that I win and pay B, I get a B star minus B. So if I submit a bid which is less than B, then I lose and I get zero. So this is case one, that is your B is greater than B star. So in this case, winning and bidding above B will lose me money. Bidding B star is optimal here. So, for example, Vickrey's auction, that is case one, that is B is greater than V star. That is the benefit is greater than your valuation. So, in this case, winning will lose me money bidding V star is optimal here. So, again, case two, that is B is less than or equal to V star. In this case, my payoff from winning, that is V star minus B is positive. So this is also independent of what I bet. So if I bet B is equal to V star, I will be sure I always win an auction in this case. So whatever the other do bids versus is best. So note this is not true if my value depends upon what you know. So this is the issue. That is, if it is independent of others, then things are okay. But my decision is always depends on you, then this is going to be a little bit difficult. So in that context also you have another set of issue, which is another set of pricing mechanism, which is people uh, keep following, that is Clark-Groove mechanism. So this is a process that will get individuals to truthfully to reveal their preference for the public good. So this is again a bit this is a bit moralistic than the earlier one, because the earlier one independent, you have no moral, but whatever your valuation you are just reveal it. So that is the mechanism where in Vickrey's auction we had. But in this case, to understand the valuation of public good, your truthfulness is being tested. So first step is individual report their value for the bridge, that is V1 of the individual. That is the value of the first individual. And note that they don't have to report the truth. That is, your V1 is exactly equal to V1 star. So your valuation means what is you truly believe. So maybe you have a range of value, may not be exact value. Add up the reported values. If sum of the reported reports minus cost of bridge, which is greater than zero, then build the bridge. This is the sort of an example which people try to say. And if not, if sum of the report that is minus cost of bridge, then don't build the bridge. So if the individual value was decisive, that is, in this case, individuals' values are very decisive, and some of the other reports that is less than cost of bridge, which is less than sum of all reports. Then charge the individual, which is equal to cost bridge minus sum of the others report. So this is how they are trying to understand the valuation in a market mechanism. This is not actually purely doing by the public, the government, autonomously the government decides. So this is actually the public good which is being provided by private agency or the mechanism of any entity, thinks it is based on profit and loss. So optimal to tell the truth, that is, let you be the sum of the others report, and let V be my value. That is, if you is greater than cost, I don't care what I say. So reporting truthful is fine for me. So if U plus, that is optimal to tell the truth, is the basic premise in this case. That is, if U plus V is greater than cost, which is also greater than utility, then any report U such that your U plus your truthful value, that is, which is greater than cost, or the U which is greater than the cost of the bigger U. So will get me utility in that sense. So that means your valuation, truthful valuation, you may not see the point of this mechanism is the following. Uh, for the time being, just this is the thing, that is, see, I may be having different, I may not be perfectly knowing about the real value which I had. Maybe I value it partially, maybe, but I know that there is some real value. So that real value, if which I think for the time being, uh, whatever the amount I can report, then that amount is actually the crucial amount. It is not necessary that what is the exact amount of, maybe I get a little higher or a little lower, but I don't mind. So I think that kind of a revelation of the utility and the summation of that utility minus the cost of a bridge or construction of the public good, it requires amount money, right? The expenditure. So that expenditure minus the benefit or the reported value, then still if there is a benefit, what does people try to say is actually you just build the bridge, and pricing would be accordingly. That is, the average price of the reported value of the bridge still make actually profit, because the sum of the valued thing is actually greater than the amount which you are going to spend. In that sense, in this sort of a truthful revolution, truthful revealing or whatever, reporting of the value is makes some sort of sense. So, what are the properties of this sort of a model in a in a market framework? Okay, in that context, there are a couple of properties which is with the Clark-Grove mechanism. First one is optimal to tell the truth. So that is, it is always optimal to tell the truth, not necessarily the exact truth, but whatever. So water only pay when decisive. Payment which is less than the benefit received. As population grows, less of a problem with excess revenue. So these are as far as this particular framework is concerned. So, in a nutshell, this pricing mechanism of public good, in fact, uh, makes two challenges. That is, A, if it is being autonomously provided by some entity based on their own calculation or not, either they have to go for one of this sort of calculation, and then you know apply that cost to everybody who is going to benefit out of it. So then, or this sort of different pricing mechanism, then they sum up all the in, reported price of the value of the public good, and then they decide whether they can provide it or not. So it is all actually some or the other way this project evaluation takes place, and the public good being provided accordingly. And again, some people in that sense, it is not actually completely the interesting point is that it is not completely eradicate the externality, and none of this model says that an externality need to be eradicated because or removed. Why? Because the Clark-Grove model or the mechanism, maybe the benefit, the reported benefit is actually still greater than the cost. Then only they will build the bridge. Otherwise, they will not bridge. So if there is no bridge, again people will increase their valuation. So again, it will take time, and the bridge will get materialized. So this is actually this is how the pressure of people get reflected in construction of different developmental activity, not necessarily development. This sort of public goods which is being provided by the government or the institution, and if the government don't have money, and then they'll uh, ask for some private, but which is actually not rationalized by any of this thing. Because, for example, there was the BOT, build, operate, and transfer, or there are different sort of build, operation, transfer, or now, build, then transfer, and then operate. So there are different mechanism of this or public-private partnership in the real world. But even that partnership, the same valuation would be there. But who is getting benefit out of it, etc., is also being understood very carefully. So with this pricing mechanism, some way you can actually ensure that the public good can be provided, to the public good is still having the problem of externality or free ride. But because there are many people who have highest utility, but they still pay lesser amount. But at the same time, some people have lesser utility, but still they pay more. So this issue is always there, but in all the model, you can say that the pricing of the public good can be made. It is nothing like that you cannot make it. So this is what is all this pricing strategies being put forward, put forth as far as the public good is concerned. With this, let me stop the lecture and thank you. If any question you have, I'll take up.